Right, let's make sure we are live and then we can get started. I think we're live now. Good morning. This is Bernard Nomberg. We've got another weekly episode of NOMBERG LAW Live, and I'm so pleased to have my friend Melanie Leonard on with us. Good morning, Melanie. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, good. I'm doing well as well, and thank you for making some time this morning. Um,
My pleasure.
I, as we all are, as professionals, regardless of what type of profession you're in, if you have a family, if you have children, if you have a business you own, you're going to be a stressed person to a certain extent. Everybody has their own levels of stress and how they deal with that work-life balance. And Melanie is with us today. We're going to talk about that. And Melanie, I'm so glad that we're able to chat today because this is such an important topic for us all.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to just make clear, I was so excited to speak about this topic, not because I consider myself an expert in it, but more because I consider myself a passionate student of the subject. Ever since I got out of college and started law school and started thinking about what I wanted my life to look like as far as being an attorney and what firm I was going to practice at and all that kind of stuff. Those are the kind of things that my brain just thinks about automatically. And so to be able to spend some time talking to you about it and to bring this to the attention of other attorneys, especially not just attorneys, also other business owners, but I think attorneys especially sometimes get stuck in this idea that, you're an attorney, your job is going to be stressful. And to some extent it is, but I think sometimes there's a lot that we can do to alleviate some of that stress that we don't necessarily think about and that's not brought to our attention early on.
Yeah, it's such an important topic, but before we get too deep into it, I did a terrible job of introducing you
Oh.
when we started this. If you would, I know that you're with Streamlined Legal, and if you would, Melanie, tell us a little bit about that organization and what you guys strive to do.
Absolutely. So I started Streamlined Legal about a year ago, and it came about because I had had my own practice for about 12 years, and I did residential real estate outside of the city of Chicago and the suburbs, and, built that practice from nothing to, a thriving business, and just got to a point where I was noticing so many of my fellow attorneys that were struggling with things like technology. They would have a bunch of technology in their office and they wouldn't quite know how to use it. Maybe it wasn't so much training, it was more like, how do we make this fit into our practice? So for me, I really recognize that as a struggle for a lot of people, and that's something I'm very passionate about, is using technology and developing systems within your firm to try and grow your practice. And so I sold my law firm and decided that I wanted to focus on that for a while and started Streamline Legal, where we've been able to help a lot of attorneys implement technology and build systems to help them grow their businesses. It's been a lot of
And I
fun.
think, and online, that's where I came across you and your company. And I know you're based out of Illinois, but I did want to say a quick hello to Max Law Guru, one of the tandem that brings us Max Law, and that's what brought us together. Is Jim Hacking is watching us. Good morning, Jim. Hope you're doing well, bud. I never know what part of the country you're in, but wherever you are, hope that it's warm and dry. But thanks for spending a minute with us, Jim. Melanie, one of the videos that you recently put out that really caught my attention was the law practice versus law business video. And I'm going to put it in the comments after our show, but I want you to chat a little bit about that philosophy and thought.
Yeah, I put that video out because I work with a lot of attorneys that, like many of us, I mean, when I went to law school, it was all about how to practice law. You learn how to write your briefs, you learn how to, represent your client in court, you learn all kinds of great advocacy skills. But what you really don't learn at all, at least in my education in law school, was how to run a business. And when the reality is that over 50% of attorneys these days are coming out of law school and going into either solo practices or small practices where they're one of a handful of attorneys, they aren't getting that business education in law school. So nobody teaches us how to run a business. and nobody teaches us necessarily that a law firm is a business. And so we come out of law school, a lot of us, with this idea that as long as I do a great job representing my clients, if I win the cases, if I represent them well in negotiations, then, I'm going to be very successful. And that can be a big factor in things, of course, but, that's not going to save you if you don't know how to, budget for your marketing, and you don't know how to budget for your expenses and all the other things that come along with growing a business. And so, the idea that it's a law practice really just focuses, in my mind, on the legal aspect of it, when really there's this whole other side, which is a business. And so really keeping that in the forefront of your mind and being conscious of the idea that, this is a business and that we do need to focus on certain things that may not be legally related, I think is very important, because of course we all want to be successful. We all want our, to be able to help as many people as possible. But if we don't get a handle on that business aspect of it, I think we're going to struggle a lot more, and that's going to make our practices a lot more difficult to be a part of.
You're right. I don't think law schools ever teach how to run a law practice, or all of those practical things that you might learn your first several years if you're fortunate enough to be part of a bigger firm and you can be mentored. In Birmingham, we have a very active mentor-mentee committee and program that's been going on for about a dozen years. And I'm fortunate, I'm one of the mentors in that program. But without something like that, if you start, you're right, if you don't have a mentor, somebody who's been through it, if you're not fortunate to have been born into a family of lawyers, you're scratching your head every single day. How do you run a business? And how do you practice law at the same time? And even for those of us, even for those of us who've been practicing for quite a while, it still becomes a daily, weekly, or monthly thing you have to deal with.
Oh,
so I agree with you that law practice versus law business is such a very important balance that you've got to figure out.
Yeah, and there's the some people say, well, I'm much more interested in the practice. I don't really want to run a business. And that's fine. I'm not implying that all attorneys need to be perfect at both. I'm only thinking that it needs to be paid some attention. So whether you hire someone to help you do it, or, partner up with another attorney who prefers the business side and you prefer the legal side, or whatever, whatever kind of solution you come up with is fine, just as long as it's being addressed and not ignored, because that's when I think you get in real trouble, is if you're ignoring either on purpose or, just not thinking of the whole business aspect. It makes things a lot more difficult.
Yeah, for me personally, I've been in partnership with my brother, my youngest brother, for more than 15 years. And I do most of the online digital and the marketing and those kind of things. He does a little bit of it, but majority of his work and his focus is on the practice of law. And you're right, for a two-person firm, and we have just some support personnel, somebody in the group has to focus on the other parts. I do a lot of the administration, I do a lot of the marketing and all of that, and he does, like I said, most of his focus, probably 90% of his focus is the lawyering. And mine, I'm kind of here or there each part of the week, but we make it work. And that's where I want to transition, talk about this for just a minute. It's already tough enough being a professional, doing your legal work on a day-to-day basis and being successful, because everybody who comes out of law school is laser focused, or at least they should be, and they're very good at what they do. And it's a very competitive profession. At least in my perspective in Birmingham, it's very competitive. TV lawyer, billboards, everywhere. But with that comes the stress of being successful and achieving those things that you want to achieve. And what I want to talk about for a minute, and I'll shut up because you're the person who should be talking, not me, is what do you suggest? How do you maybe personally, how do you find that balance? You've got a young family, you're running a business, your husband's a professional, those kind of things.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, but I would say that one of the things that really helps me, you just mentioned actually in your question, is that laser focus, right? So you have to be very clear on what your goals are and how you're going to get there, because, there's people coming at you from all different directions. This person wants to sell me this software. This person wants to do this. That person wants me to help them with this. And, the PTA wants some help with this. And there's all kinds of people and things vying for your attention and your time. And so you have to prioritize, what is important to me and what am I trying to accomplish? And and be very strict about it. If it does not fit into that goal, then a nice, polite, I'm sorry, I can't help you today, or here's someone else that might be able to help you, give them a nice referral, whatever you can do, but don't take that on, because you have to draw lines and you have to draw boundaries as to what you're going to spend your time on. So for example, I have a daughter who's 6 and a son who's 9. They're both active in school, and we've got PTAs and they've got soccer and they've got all kinds of activities, which is awesome. But quite some time ago when my son was entering school, it became a very clear shift for my husband and I, who, when it comes time to register for soccer, I am not the one doing that. I mean, that is all him. When it comes time to make sure that the doctor's appointment doesn't get missed for the annual physical, that's all him. So you have to kind of come to some balance in your life to figure out, okay, well, how are we going to handle this and how are we going to handle that? That's how we handle it. Not to say it has to be done that way. But if somebody comes to me and says, I want to show you this software. Well, if I'm not in the market for a software, no, thank you. If somebody comes and says, well, we need, a donation for the PTA, well, maybe it's easier for me to, at this point in my life, maybe it's easier for me to, get on Instacart and order the juice boxes and have them delivered the next day, so that I can fulfill that obligation and feel good about being able to contribute that way. But it doesn't have to physically be me driving all over town to do these things. So I think that, like I said, just being very laser focused on what your priorities are and sticking to that focus, because it's very easy to let somebody come in and say, oh, well, could you just help me with this, or could you just help me with that? And of course I want to help people. I mean, that's the whole reason why I'm doing this. But, it can be too much at some point, and it will distract you from what you're trying to accomplish. And that's tough.
We've all heard learning to say no may be one of the toughest things, but it may also be one of the best things that you can do. Most people want to be helpful. They want to contribute, but at some point in time, you got to draw the line.
Oh, yeah. And at some point, it's either going to be them or my kids, or them or, my time or my money. And so it has to, you have to find that line for yourself. And I'm not implying it's easy, but for me and my family to be able to identify those goals, it makes that a lot easier.
For those of you just joining us or will be watching later on, we're talking with Melanie Leonard. Melanie is helping us get organized and stay stress-free, and we're talking about that life-work balance. And just like you may have a system at work, we all, hopefully all of us, if you haven't, you need to read John Fisher's The Power of Systems about how to run a law practice. So many great advice and information there. And good morning, Annika. Good to see you. I hope you're doing well. You got to have your systems at work, just like you got to have your systems outside of work. And for me personally, if anybody knows anything about who I am, I love to hike. I also make my attempt at yoga on a regular basis and do workout classes. I try to nap. I've got all these other things built in that hopefully are good for me and help me to stay somewhat stress-free and being able to deal with my responsibilities at work as well as my responsibilities in my away from work life. And that just seems like such a tough balance.
It is. Absolutely.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, you're absolutely right, because I know that if I don't specifically set aside time for some of those things like going to the gym or, whatever helps me de-stress a bit, if I don't specifically set aside time for those, they won't happen. I mean, someone will call, a client will call, I want to help them, someone will email, I want to get it off my plate as soon as possible. So the work will always keep coming and the work will always be there to be done. But if you're not setting aside time for yourself, then you're going to lose it. I mean, it's just, you have to prioritize that. And I know that it's an easier said thing than done. But it takes, just a little bit of a time. Maybe maybe 30 minutes a week, for this exercise. And then maybe after a couple weeks, you bump it up to 2 times a week so that you can try and build that in and gradually ease into that. Another thing that I do, though, other than just living and dying by my calendar and putting those things there and respecting the calendar, is I also try to multitask to some extent. So, for example, I like going to the gym. When I'm at the gym, I'm always listening to a podcast, whether it's How I Built This or Maximum Lawyer or whatever it is, right? So which is great because I've really found that, just listening to those things in the car or by myself or whatever, they're fine, they're great, you get good stuff out of them. But there's something about doing it while you're physically, moving that really gets you like into the ideas and gets your brain start thinking about them a lot differently. So I really found that that's been a really great way to work. But then the same thing you were talking about, the systems you have at home. I mean, if my Blue Apron doesn't come once a week with 3 meals, then we're going to be in quite a fix for dinners, So
Oh, yeah.
there's a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
things like that we have built in to try and make those things easier because, I mean, I could spend my time shopping and meal planning and all that stuff, but that's less time I'm going to be spending either with my children or growing my business or, so I've identified the things that are priorities for me, and meal planning and shopping is not one of them. So being
It's
able to find those tools is helpful.
It's priorities and it's lifestyle changes and choices. I do have a funny story to share with you. Um, I'm a single dad and I raised my 2 daughters and I tried, we never would, I'm not a cook. I'm terrible at it, but we
Sure.
did Blue Apron for quite a while. But we had one of those occasions where it didn't show up on time. It actually showed up the next day. But I was at a scramble. We don't eat fast food, and I knew they were coming home and I had to have, because you just got to get everything done timely. So
Yep.
I actually went and bought fast food and messed up my kitchen and made it appear as if I had made the meal. Well, one daughter quickly, the older daughter, she caught on very quickly. She's like, "Hey, what is this? What's?" The other daughter was finished eating by the time they figured it out. But I thought I would get away with it, but of course
Well,
not.
and that's a great example of priorities though too, right? Like your priority was, conveying to your daughters that the homemade meal was important, right?
That's right.
For
That's
that
right.
that's not a priority for me. For me, I would have thrown it on the table and been like, eat up, So, it's everybody's got their own priorities. It's all figuring out how to make that work with your lifestyle and changing your lifestyle to support your priorities, which is, again, easier said than done. But until you start taking those baby steps, you don't really realize how powerful that can be.
And the lesson that I learned, among other lessons, was never, ever, ever underestimate what your children know. Never.
Absolutely.
They'll
Absolutely.
never tell you, but what they
I was gonna say
truly know.
they pick up on that stuff
That's
super
right.
young. I mean, I'm already worried about what my kids think about.
What
I
they
try and
hear
tell
and
them
what
this.
they see, they take it
Yeah.
all in. But
Mhm.
the other thing I was going to tell you, when you were talking about a podcast when you're at the gym, I get out in the woods. We've got 11 miles behind my office, and I love getting out there when the weather's right and I've got the time. And I've had occasions over the last couple of years, really the last 18 months, where I've had lawyers in town who I'm buddies with. Hey, come tell me about how you do something that you do on digital or social media. I say, all right, meet me at my office. We're going to go for a hike. And then we talked throughout the hike. So it's not taking up extra time. I was glad to spend the time with him
I
and
love
telling
it.
what I knew. And we're sharing things. But you're right. It's multitasking, but in a good way, in a very good way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love that idea. How am I gonna get people to the gym? That's the next question.
Well, let's shift gears for just a little bit, and we could talk about this topic for hours.
Yeah.
But I know that your time is precious, and people don't want to watch me talk for the next however long. But I want to talk about, and this is something that we've heard many people online talk about this. Mitch and Jim and John and all these folks who really I learn from all the time is when you're on digital media and you're doing social and you want people to learn who you are as an attorney, you've got to show something about yourself. And I know that's something that you focus on because I see that coming out of in the videos that you do. So share a little bit about your philosophy about showing who you are to the public.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny you bring that up because I used to think when I first started my practice 12, 13 years ago, I used to think that the work-life balance meant work-life separation, so it was like I'm presenting this one image here at work, but then I'm a little different at home. And not to say they were that different, but you walk into court, you're always going to be at your best, and you're always going to be appearing as confident as possible, and all that. Which maybe I'm not always doing when I'm in front of my kids, So I really thought of it that way, and I would structure my marketing at the very beginning as, what do I think people want to see? What do I think they're going to want to buy? I did residential real estate, so what's going to attract a home buyer, a home seller, a real estate agent, something like that. And it wasn't until I read a book by Randy Zuckerberg where she talks about the authentic self. And she speaks about it in terms of social media and real life, and kind of, there was a time back at the beginning of social media and beginning of the internet where you would use like a pseudonym, or you would use your, whatever kind of name you had. And that still happens to some extent in the gaming world and stuff, but now it's much more where people are now presenting themselves as themselves, so there wasn't this kind of facade that you were hiding behind anymore. And so when reading her book, it really made a lot of sense to me in the business perspective, because, that's one of the real advantages I think that solo and small firms have, is that they have this unique personality that they can share with the world. And there are some people, of course, that may be turned off by that personality. Back in the day, I used to be concerned that people would, not like some political view I had or something, and then that would lose me business. And which is true, that could happen. But by the same token, there may be, 6 other people that really appreciate that political view and want to, support that. So whether it's politics, whether it's personality, whether it's, any aspect of you, I really feel now that I was looking at it all wrong. And it's not that we need to separate those two necessarily, but that can be a really powerful advantage in trying to market my own business, my own services. So now it's much more my current business, and even my law firm as I progressed, but are much more in tune with what my personality is personally and what my views and opinions are, so that, that's what's shown out to the world, and that's what distinguishes me from other attorneys and other small businesses. So I really think that realization has really done a lot for my marketing efforts, for my networking efforts, and it all around just has made me happier, because now I don't have to worry about, well, what do I do in this situation and how do I present myself here? No, I just always present myself as me. And it makes life a lot easier, that's for sure.
Well, it lets the viewers of what you're presenting connect with you. I would think the average person who's never really dealt with lawyers, that they're a little hesitant because all they see is what's in the movies or on TV.
Sure.
And by showing who you are, your personality, letting it come out a little bit, it lets them connect. And I've had more than well, I've had several potential and current clients say, I've watched a bunch of your YouTube videos about work comp. I feel like I know you already. And that's great. I love that. Now, I will tell you as a side note, first couple of years, my Instagram handle was, it's not anymore. It used to be the mayor of Nap City, because I love to nap. But I've since changed it. But anyway, but you're right. It lets the viewers connect with you. They let them see that you're just a person just like them, but you just have an expertise that they may need to hire you for, or to relate to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, I want to thank David, or say hello to David Hudson and Mom for tuning in. Guys, if y'all are just tuning in with us, I've got Melanie Leonard, and she is sharing some awesome knowledge about work-life balance, about how to share yourself on social, to relate to the public. And Melanie, we're getting close to the end, but I do have some other things I want to talk with you about. I know that you're from Shiner, Texas. And I don't know how many people in the public know that you're originally from Shiner. Give us one tidbit about Shiner, Texas that we may not know.
Yeah, my mom grew up there. My uncle, her whole family comes from there, and so we get back down there every couple of years. Shiner's well known for Shiner Bock. If you're looking for a good beer, especially to go with barbecue, pick it up. Pick it up. It's
That's
all,
right.
they're
That's
now
right.
distributed nationally, so I'm sure you can find it wherever you are.
Even in Birmingham, we can get it.
Oh
That's
yeah,
right. That's
absolutely.
right. Melanie, before we conclude, I know you're going to be at the conference next month that I'm really looking forward to, the Max Law Conference 19 in St. Louis. I don't know if it's sold out, but I wanted to give it a little plug. I
Absolutely.
know that we haven't met in person, but we'll get to see each other there, and I'm looking forward to sharing some time with you
I agree.
there.
I think the very cool part about it is, there's a lot of groups that I interact with people on Facebook, which is awesome. Especially just the technology to be able to do that across the country is wonderful. But to be able to actually meet those people in person as well, like we'll be able to at the Max Law Conference, I'm super, super excited about.
Well, you're exactly right. That was my experience last year when I went to the first conference, having only seen these people, virtually for the year plus before actually getting to meet them in real life. It's like, wow, all these people are coming to life for me, and they're real people. Um, Melanie, I want to ask you in closing. First of all, how can people get in touch with you if they're interested in Streamlined Legal and what you have to offer? How do folks get in touch with you?
Absolutely. Our Facebook page, we try and put out a couple videos a week, so that might be the best way to, get a feel for how we interact with people. That's Streamlined Legal on Facebook. And then our website is www.streamlined.legal. So we're excited to have you stop by and learn a little bit more about it.
Very good. We'll put all the contact information for you in the comments
Thank you.
section.
And thank you so much for having us today. It's been
Oh,
a great
my
pleasure.
pleasure.
And again, I look forward to meeting you guys in person. I'm really excited about it.
My pleasure, Melanie. One last thing. I'm gonna put you on the spot again. Give
Sure.
us one takeaway for today. What is something you're going to do today or sometime this week that's going to help with your work-life balance that we should all strive to achieve or to attempt?
Yeah, I would say my one thing I would encourage everyone to do is to go back and look at their practices and look at their offices and how they get things done. So whether it's something, just anything as far as technology, as far as moving paperwork, as far as moving product, whatever it is that you're doing in your office, find one pain point. And it doesn't have to be like, a huge thing. Maybe it's just, these thank you notes never get out until 3 months later, right? Find one little pain point and focus on it for about 15 minutes and find a solution. So for example, if it's thank you notes, maybe you want to assign that to a different person within your office who can get it done faster. Maybe you want to outsource that. There's a company called Send Out Cards that will send out your thank you notes for you. So just take a little time to focus on the pain points within your office and try and basically come up with a solution. And again, you can start very, very little. It doesn't have to be huge. But once you get into that kind of that habit of analyzing your business that way, I think that you'll be a lot happier as you move forward because you'll be thinking in that perspective of always trying to problem solve. So start with something super small and build your way up from there.
Oh, some great stuff. Thank you, Melanie, for your time today. I really enjoyed our conversation and look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. You too. Guys, this will conclude another episode of NOMBERG Law Live. As we come to you every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Pacific. We really appreciate you tuning in now, or if you watch this on replay later on. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we will catch you another time. Take care.